So this video is about why we gave up on the country life. I've got the workshop almost entirely packed up now. The house is pretty packed up. And I have to say this workshop was never ideal. It's too big, it's too echoey. It was very hard to get it warm in the winter, and in the summer it got too hot and I really couldn't cool it. And then there'd be flies in here. Yeah, it just wasn't optimal. And I set up a workshop in the basement of the house to use in the winter when it's too hard to heat the shop, and I would have probably used that this summer if I'd had time to make videos, because it was just too hot the whole time. It was no fun being outside, just too hot this summer. And another problem with the shop is it's here and the house is way over there, and it was way out of earshot, which means if things were going out of control with the kids, or if it was time for lunch, I couldn't hear what's going on. Again, not optimal. A basement shop was much more ideal that way. So now I'll just walk around the property a little bit and show you some of the things that attracted me to this property, which of course there are plus sides to a big country property like this. It's just the minuses outweigh the pluses for us at this point, and show you some of the things that are special about this property. This here is the Mississippi River, not the big American Mississippi River, just a river of that name near Ottawa. And this area here is actually a pretty good fishing spot. Not that I ever go fishing, and this is going downriver right there. There's a canoe that was left here when I bought the property, and Rachel and I went canoeing on the river once. This is before we moved out here and before we had kids. The logistics of trying to go canoeing with small kids and no family around just doesn't work, and there's no time for it. There's a nice grassy area down here by the river, but of course that only stays that way if you mow it from time to time. And there's a row of ash trees here, which unfortunately are dying because of the emerald ash borer. So those really need to be cut down at some point. And with my tendonitis issues, I really shouldn't be using a chainsaw. And even then, it takes up huge amounts of time. Of course, you do get free firewood. And if you count the value of time, then actually that becomes a rather expensive way to heat your house. This is a plum tree I planted a few years ago with a cage around it to keep the deer from attacking it. Unfortunately, the plum tree didn't like it here. It died. Oh well. And what we've got here is some wild parsnip right here. Here's more of it. The stuff, the sap of it, if you get it on your skin and then exposed to sun, it causes serious burns. This is an invasive, obnoxious weed. I've been doing a bit of battle trying to keep it from spreading, but again, that's something that takes up huge amounts of time, and it's a losing battle. Here we've got some burr weeds, more of them here. Just these big leaves, they look a bit like rhubarb, but they're not rhubarb. I sort of consider that stuff to be sort of the weed of abandonment, because it always grows on abandoned farms. And the burrs just stick to you. This one's gone ripe. These are the burrs. I hate this plant. And I've also been doing battle with some of these weeds. When I was 16, living at my parents', I waged battle with the burrs, and I managed to eradicate them from much of the property just by going around and actually pulling the taproots out of the ground, which I could just barely do with all my strength, because if you just cut it, it just comes back. This area here is just full of those burrs. I kind of decided that these were too much to deal with all at once, so I left them. But in other areas of the property, at least last year, I was gathering up before they got fully ripe and put them on the burn pile just to keep them from spreading. If you manage to get all the seeds for a few years in a row, then they're gone. But that's another thing that takes up tons of time. And in the trees back here, you can see a hunting stand with a ladder. I always let some friends hunt the property, which they very much appreciated, and I'd get some favors and some wild game out of it from time to time. Really, the ideal thing is to know somebody else who's got a big property, and so you can enjoy it without maintaining it. Steve is very sad to not be able to hunt here anymore because the new buyer is into hunting and he doesn't want anybody else hunting the game on this property. So Steve won't be able to hunt here anymore, unfortunately. So the thing with a big property like this is it was here before I was, and it'll still be here after I'm gone. So to own this property, you're essentially just a steward of the land. And in exchange for that, you get the exclusive right to decide what to do and enjoy the property. But the problem is, for us, we have not had time to enjoy this property because it's so much work. And with little kids, there's just no time left. So these fields have been rented by a local farmer for not a whole lot of money. The biggest benefit of renting the land to a farmer is you get a huge break on the property taxes. And see these plants here? This stuff, that's poison ivy. I've had some nasty run-ins with this stuff. It grows in a few places on the property, and it turned out also under the hedge next to our house, which I wasn't aware of. And trimming down there, well, I had a nasty rash for about a month last year. And this takes us to what I call the back field, which is essentially part of another 100-acre lot for this property. It's 200-acre lots, the property, but much of it is on the other side of the river. So overall, it's not 200 acres, but definitely more than 100. This field is soybeans. If you ever watch Owen Benjamin, he doesn't like soy very much, but there's plenty of it growing here. And here's a branch that fell off a tree and into the field right about here. And of course somebody has to clear that up, and that person, that would be me. For the time being, I just kind of kicked it to the edge of the field. And now let's go down to the river. There's a bit of bushwhacking here. It's a pretty cool spot down there. I think I need to go down right about here. So this is an area that I explored a bit back when I bought the property. And I was down here again scouting for Christmas trees last year. That's 6 years later. And now I'm down here again to show you. And this will be my last time down here. It is cool. I think as a 10-year-old kid, I would have really enjoyed this. But as it is, no time. I may not have hit the spot right on for where to go. So there's a side channel, so to say, for the river, and this is the spot where that channel is blocked, which makes this part not quite an island. When the water is high, it flows through here as well. Right now, not so much. It's all rock down here, and that kind of shapes how the land erodes from the water. This goes upstream, and then the other end goes downstream. And this little land bridge is the only way to get onto this area of the land. And this is the only bit of whoa, shit! I should not have been holding a camera. I got myself wet, but saved the camera. I will not film crossing this right now. Okay, crossed over. These are stinging nettles. They're a bit like mosquito bites when you touch them. Quite annoying. But long pants is enough to prevent that. And this here is a lot of cedar, but being very rocky for this area, there's a fair bit of open areas and individual trees, which is why this area has kind of suitable Christmas trees. The only place on the property that does, because it's mostly hardwoods, and where it is deciduous trees, or is it coniferous? I never know which one. Where it is trees with needles, they're mostly too close together, so you don't get a good Christmas tree unless you cut down a big one and take the top off of it, and I didn't want to do that. So it's kind of open here. I hate these junipers, they're so stingy. There's probably a better way around this, but I'm just going to go through. So here's the river, and I'm just walking upstream, and there's the, coming up here is the bay with the island on it. And here's a little stack of firewood, and somebody made a fire pit here. You can see a circle of stones, so previous owners enjoying the property, or friends thereof. In fact, it's not unlikely that the person who is buying the property might have had a fire here, because he spent a lot of time here as a kid. So he has quite an attachment to the property that way. I didn't grow up here, so my attachment is much less. And here you can see some trees that are semi-suitable for Christmas trees. And let's walk to the shore. That could be a Christmas tree. Oh, this is bur oak. It's a form of white oak. Quite abundant on the property. White oak is a very nice wood. And right here is the island, and the spot I was on the river before is just on the far side of that island. Oh, look. I'm walking through poison ivy. Lots of it here. Oh gosh. It's a good thing I am not wearing shorts. Okay, this slope is a little iffy. I think I have to put down the camera. Just came through here. This is the narrowest, shallowest part of the river. So the water is always moving relatively fast around here. There's actually quite a few people that have houses on the other side of the river, but none of them visible from the river. I don't think they're allowed to just cut down the trees up to the river, which makes living on the riverfront actually maybe a little bit pointless. So this piece of land here is all rocky, but it's the only part of the land that is rocky. Well, except for, no, there's a few other spots that are rocky, but mostly it's clay and such. There's kind of a little trail here. You can barely see it. This trail was not made by me or any other humans, just animals that walk through here. The problem with these trails made by animals is they're very low. And this is where this channel comes out, and there's a nice grassy area back there. Of course, it's all in the floodplain. I'd go and show it to you, but I'd have to kind of go quite a long way around to get there. And fact is, I've only been on that spot once when I checked out the property. You can see somebody's dock back there where they've got their boat. But other than that, not much to see on the river, which is actually quite nice. Even though there's quite a few people living just behind the line of trees. Oh, I guess there is more of this grassy area around here, which can be quite swampy if it's been wet, but it's been relatively dry lately. Oh, a frog. Whoa, squishy. Whoa! Okay, I need to walk a bit further from the water. Oh, I think I was wrong about where I crossed over. This is the best spot to cross over. Yes, the water is quite low. Yes, up here it's completely blocked with all the rocks. This is riverbed when the water is sufficiently high. Oh yes, this is the way I should have come down. I got the spot slightly wrong. So much easier walking here. I don't know what the snow fencing here is for. My guess is when there's cows grazing here, that would have been part of the enclosure to keep the cows from roaming. But there hasn't been cows grazing here for many years. This looks like a bit of a path that the deer made to walk around. There's often deer roaming around here. And we're back in the soy field. And back here, I'm told that's an elm tree. Dutch elm disease hasn't gotten all of them. It's possible that it's resistant, or just by being isolated that it's been spared. And this row of trees here, mostly bur oak, nice wood, but I haven't cut any of them down. So the whole idea of giving up on the country life is to try to free up time, because we haven't had time for anything. To do anything here is a drive. That takes up time. There's not very much available in terms of daycare options nearby, which of course means again more time. The one we do send Kurt to is a 15-minute drive, so that's an hour of driving each day to put him there and pick him up. For Harriet, we haven't really found anything that she liked. And then in the winter time, you can only walk where the snow's been cleared, which means you really can't go for a walk. But of course everything's a drive anyways. And all the stuff to do around the property, of course, that takes up time. And the shop isn't ideal. And I think this property would be wonderful for the kids once they're maybe 10 years old. But we have to get there first. And we've actually been thinking of maybe having a third kid. But one thing is for sure, if we stay here, we cannot have a third kid, because kids take up lots of time and we have no time left here. We have no time to enjoy the property. So what's the point of the country property? And so we're moving to Fredericton, where Rachel's parents are, and they love the kids. So that'll be good for them, and it'll be good for us. It means maybe from time to time we'll be able to do something without the kids in the evening, which is something we have not been able to do unless we're with Rachel's parents since Harriet was born. Oh yeah, here's a wildlife camera. Steve, who likes to hunt here, put some of these up to scout what sort of wildlife roams around here, because he really wants to get a deer. Unfortunately, the closing date is before hunting season for him, so he's going to miss out on that. And here's some more of those burr weeds that I hate so much. And here you can look down on the bay with the island in it. And that channel that goes through is right about here. And the spot where I was looking onto the island is right here. And of course the island is in the way for seeing the spot where, the first spot I showed you on the river. And the only reason you can have such a clear view down to the island from here is because 20 years ago there was a landslide right here, because the way the river flows causes a bit of erosion down here. So I guess every few decades or so there's going to be a landslide here and lose a tiny bit of farmland. Although I saw pictures of when that landslide was, and the fence was stretched across here, which is to say it had been quite a few years before the previous landslide, because that fence would have been quite old. So normally I would post videos of this nature only on my second channel, but seeing that I haven't had actually anything to post onto my main channel for some time, because I haven't had time to make videos, mostly with getting ready for the move and family visits and such. So I figure at least this will give you an update if you don't follow my second channel. I do hope to get back to making projects once we're moved and settled, but that could be a month or two, because I'm so sick of packing. I'm really going to take my time with unpacking. I've got way too much stuff, and I think on unpacking I might purge a bit more stuff. It's just when packing it's hard to sort the stuff, because you put some of those things in the same box and then you tape it up, and then you find more of the same stuff, and then it's like, is this duplicate or not? So you just pack it. So hopefully on unpacking I'll be able to eliminate more stuff. Okay, now I gotta do some editing. House is partially packed, but not as much stuff up here. And here's where I do the editing. In the new house, I'll have an office.